What's up, guys? As usual, just give me a second to get the laptop screen loaded. I hope you guys, I know I can tell that some of you weren't there for the premiere of the Huxley video. I hope everyone watches it. We'll talk a little bit about some of the scenes in there. I'm making a patron-only version of everything I do from now on, so and I'm sorry also if you're a patron, I rescheduled the secret stream for Sunday because I really wanted to get that video out because I really liked it a lot. And it's been really interesting making this kind of series. So far I've done Timothy Leary, Aleister Crowley, next up are Terrence McKenna, Robert Anton Wilson. And then I'll probably do like mixed videos. But every single one that I've made so far, particularly the Crowley and the Huxley video, and in the Huxley one, it was even like more layers were synchronizing on their own. Like as I was making it, the scenes would just synchronize. So, you know, if the lyrics were saying like destroy another fetus now, the image was like medical waste, and the quote was something like medical science is developing so well that soon none of us will be well, or something like that. So I kind of felt like I was like genuinely accompanied by like magic during the process of creating those videos. So please do check them out if you get a chance. Huxley was amazing. I mean, he's one of the earliest influences on my early life, I guess, as a preteen adolescent. I started reading Huxley, and it really gave me a sense that I wasn't alone. As he said, normal people are profoundly mentally ill. And I've been thinking along those lines for quite some time. I mean, most of my life I felt like they were not as open-minded, and that there was a lot of the universe that they failed to perceive, but it didn't really register that what we're seeing is actual mental illness in the overwhelming majority of European, American, Australian, probably all modern cultures. It's actually profound mental illness. They're well adjusted to an extremely toxic society. Narcissistic personality disorder is becoming so common that you can almost just assume that someone that you meet has it. So it's also extraordinary to see that Huxley was making these observations about the society that he was in the 1920s, and a lot of the stuff in that video is just as true today. Everything in that video actually is just as true today as it was in his time, and so it really drives home this kind of point that that things change but they stay the same. There's really nothing happening. It's just this balance of opposite energies just interacting and equilibrating. I can't figure out how to say it. You know what I'm trying to say. Coming into homeostasis in relation to each other. So it's just sort of a static process where the specific details are evolving, but most of the essential constituent events and pieces are the same as they've always been. And so I want to mention a couple of things here about politics, because it's just terrifying, and we need to be aware of this and really watch how insane it all is. So Kyle Rittenhouse found not guilty. I didn't really follow that when I was watching, but I figured at the time that there's probably a bunch of rioters. This kid was probably genuinely trying to protect the businesses there, and people probably legitimately attacked him, and he shot them. I just assumed, but I didn't really know any of the details. But then I actually followed some of the trial, which is really unlike me, right? What's up, Mr. Charles? Did you check out the Huxley video? Were you there? I was really stoked about how that one came out, man. I hope everybody sees it. And share it, please. Like, I'm going to put chapters in so people can skip some of the parts. Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, there were people with guns. Like, at what point is it not self-defense? I actually, for the first time ever, I started deleting liberals from my Facebook page. I mean, I'm more of a liberal than anything else. Like, I probably fall into that category. 80% of my views, and most of it I'm not going to object to, right? And I'm not one of the, I don't think that they're, everyone is like misled, but it's not like they're bad. But it's getting really bad with the liberals, and it didn't used to be this way. But for example, this is the kind of stuff we really need to watch out for and be aware of, because an awareness of it can help us to unify, and that is the solution. It's really, really alarming how much people are falling for the divide and conquer narrative. It's a real thing. It's always been done. Like, you know, read the, like, what is it, like manuals of empire, like Lao Tzu's ancient writings and stuff. You know, this population management and control has always been a concern of empire. So one of the things that they're doing is that they are only making martyrs of complete pieces of shit for the liberals, because the narrative that they're feeding the right is that the liberals are a bunch of evil criminals that want to destroy America, and look at the people they're supporting, look at the people they're defending, and they're dead wrong in every case. You know, and I know I'm liable to get, you know, 100 unsubscribes for saying this if that many people watch the video, you know, like most of them. But the truth is that, oh God, who's that guy that got his knee, they kneed his neck and squished out his life? I can't remember, but you know, the one that caused all the riots and everything. Like, that guy put a gun to a pregnant woman's belly, and when it was in the middle of crackhead hijinks that included putting innocent people at risk because he was going to drive a car high on meth and fentanyl, which are two of the strongest drugs in the world. I mean, that guy was fully like death penalty candidate anyways. And right around the same time period, there were lots of innocent black people and white people that were killed by cops that didn't have these horrendous records. So why didn't we choose a different martyr, right? There was a ton of them. You know, I'm not saying there's no institutionalized racism. I know if you guys watch my channel regularly, you've heard this before, George Floyd. But, you know, it's a big deal, and it's important to watch out for this stuff. So now what do we have? We have a kid that was called in to protect a place that killed a registered sex offender. I don't know if it was a crime against a child or not. A guy that was holding a pistol at him, people beating him with skateboards. He ran away. Like, at what point is it self-defense? Like, after you get shot in the head? You know? But the point is that the martyrs, once again, are complete pieces of shit. All the people that he shot had terrible criminal records. And so I honestly think that's engineered, because then the right is like, oh yeah, look, the liberals they only defend criminals and evil people. And it sort of like reinforces the narrative that everyone's being fed on both sides, you know? It's totally true that MSNBC and all of the rest of these powers that be totally exaggerated the racist white power element during, you know, all this stuff to make everyone hate Trump. I mean, I hated him at the time, but now I feel like he was a way better option than Joe Biden. Not that I feel like presidents have any real legitimate power, but I mean, at least he could speak a coherent sentence. And see, we lost a couple people for sure. They probably think I'm an evil racist now because I'm telling the truth, you know. There's an old African proverb, he who speaks the truth has few friends, and I've experienced that's absolutely the case. And then we have another big problem. It's a really big problem. The U.S. is almost definitely going to war with China. I saw a Chinese government official on video a little while ago. I don't know exactly who it was, but he said, you know, you can expect war with the U.S., and whatever you imagine as the absolute worst possible outcome, and multiply that by 10 times, and it's going to be worse than that. And so, we just really have a lot of stuff that's just really boiling over, don't we? I mean, but the important thing that I think to take away from that, forget about war with China, is really just the way that they're manipulating people on both sides of the aisle to just hate each other and reinforcing the stereotypes that they believe about each other, and the left to continuously make martyrs of all of these terrible people. It's unbelievable. And the cognitive dissonance that people hold is crazy. Like, you can see it because there was a guy that I actually deleted him. I've been friends with him for years, but I deleted him because I couldn't take it anymore. And he's like, all of the liberal narrative of, Kyle Rittenhouse is just a piece of shit, evil person, and just all this stuff, right? And then he said something about the racism on the right. But then down in the comments, he admitted that each side were equally bad. So it's like he is regurgitating the narrative of the side that he feels like he belongs to, where he's going to get validation. He's going to virtue signal, and then people are going to like him. And then in the comments, you can see that he actually knows that that's what he's doing. You know what I mean? So my light just went out, so we're going to be grainy from here on out. So, all that is crazy. And I think, back to Huxley, this is nothing new. I see a lot of younger people that are part of the spiritual awakening, and they seem to think that this is new. Like, that this has just happened for the first time, and that people have never been in this type of consciousness or been aware of these things. And I hate to tell them, but in the 2000s, we probably actually were more advanced, less confused, and the overwhelming majority of those people forgot. They totally forgot. They all knew about Joe Biden and George Bush and the Patriot Act. They knew that they didn't trust the government no matter what. They didn't trust Big Pharma. They knew that, like, some conspiracies were too much to believe, but that some things were definitely wrong. And now it's like the entire liberal side has completely just become a bunch of bootlicking, mindless, virtue signaling, mainstream narrative repeating demons almost. I mean, it's not, they're not actively evil like a demon, but it's really, really bad. It really is, and I'm not negating anything. The right is just as bad, So the point being, though, that it's not like people like Huxley are new. One of the issues with Huxley, I think, is that he is way over a lot of people's heads. He actually had like 7 concepts that there were no words for that actually ended up being added to the English dictionary. One of them was the Labyrinthine Flux, which is a reference to how the complexity of phenomena is such that it's maze-like, like a labyrinth, but it's also constantly changing. That's why I used that clip from the movie Labyrinth, because she's going around this labyrinth and there's like, a wall where there wasn't before, and there's like walls that aren't really walls, and it's not just a labyrinth, but it's a changing labyrinth. And this is what our lives are like, it's kind of like the experience that I had with getting hacked this week, which I'm still totally in shock. Absolutely horrific experience. We're both traumatized for sure. Like, if I'm doing something at the computer and I get frustrated or say, oh shit, or something, my partner panics. Even though there's nothing to steal left, That's terrible. I know I'm a little bit all over the place too, but I'm drinking coffee for the first time in weeks because I'm not supposed to drink it, and honestly it's making me feel pretty sick, but I just really wanted a fucking cup of coffee, So, let's see, there was some other stuff though. Okay, so also in the movie, a scene that I want to explain because the movie, the Huxley video I made, the song, the Leonard Cohen song is playing during Steve Cutt's cartoon, is from the Natural Born Killers soundtrack, and so I left the scene in where Mickey and Mallory kill Robert Downey Jr.'s character. I don't know his name in the movie. And, to people that aren't familiar with that movie, I just assume that everyone knows the movie. but it's because of what he symbolized, and it's connected to that first part. Um, but I was just thinking, like, if people don't know that movie, it's just going to seem like this random, like, guy getting blown to bits that has nothing to do with anything, and discourage them from watching the rest of the video. But I couldn't help myself; it was too perfect. I just had to leave it in there. So I don't know, you guys. Do you have anything on your minds? Because I really didn't have much of a point to this tonight. I just thought that if we had some people watching the Huxley video, that we might have some stuff to talk about afterwards. So I decided to come on and see what happens. Also, something that's interesting to consider, and I think that it's more sort of validation for this basic premise that I operate on. Yeah, seriously, crazy synchronicities. Watch the Huxley video, man, and pay attention. When whatever the lyrics are in that song, you'll notice the cartoon is synchronized and the quotes are synchronized. I didn't do it on purpose. I moved a couple things together if the quotes weren't flowing right. You know what I mean? If I realized they fit together in a different order better. But I didn't do the synchronizing on purpose. And most of it, the first draft, they were all right where they are. So that's wild. And it also happened during the Aleister Crowley video a couple times. The cartoon that I used for the intro part, I cut it in a random spot because I knew I only needed like 10 minutes or something. It was really long. And right where I cut it in the front end was a representation of a self-portrait that Crowley had painted. And this is the only place in the cartoon had nothing to do with him. So that was mind-blowing. And then later, a couple things happened, but the most crazy one, and people probably think I did this on purpose too, it looks like it, but there's a part from the Book of Lies where he says that the one exploded into 1,000,000 spheres. And there's like this design in the background that blows up into all these little spheres when that part happens, and I didn't do that on purpose. And in the Huxley video, as I said, it's full of that kind of stuff. So yeah, man, crazy coincidences. I can't believe we got hacked and fished twice in 1 week. It's hard for me. It's really hard. It's hard to be alive, honestly. I feel like when you scrape your knee, I feel like that inside, like all day, every day, like, yeah, well, Mr. Charles, I think that's going to be a very common experience because, one of the biggest things that we have going for us in terms of, a spiritual revolution is the fact that entrainment is going to dictate that people's consciousness all entrains with the highest cycle. So, not only that, but it's becoming trendy, which is not really as positive of a scenario. It is and it isn't. The hope is that people that just get into it so that they can try to be cool will actually be affected by something of substance, and they'll actually have this transformation. Theory and practice are not always congruent. That's actually not true. It's me, according to researchers, and in my experience, what it is that if you're predisposed to schizophrenia, it will trigger it. But no one that isn't predisposed to mental illness will be driven insane by psychedelics. And in fact, you can take as much as you want for as long as you want, super high doses, whatever. I think there's probably a limit before you would actually have a problem. But, according to several studies, there's literally no danger of becoming insane because of psychedelics. But there is a danger that if you were predisposed, so at some point in your life you were gonna go schizo anyways, it'll trigger it. The interesting thing about that is that LSD and some of the other psychedelics have actually been demonstrated to be able to reverse schizophrenia, and this is something that is relatively new, and people are researchers are looking into it. Yeah, Charles, I wondered about that. Like, if we can change sexes from lifetime to lifetime, I actually would think not. But an interesting story along those lines, actually regarding my son. My mom committed suicide a few years ago. Um, Well, that's not actually true. I mean, I don't know how you could say the synchronicities mean nothing. I mean, it's allowed me to decode the universe, and I mean, I've actually presented a tremendous amount of information regarding like consciousness and energy that I derive mostly from following synchronicities, and then the studies have been published, and I've actually documented a lot of that on my channel. So I don't know how you could say the synchronicities are meaningless. Um, I've done remarkable things with them, and I've documented it all. Why could souls incarnate as different sexes, or couldn't? Well, I think that there's, you know, when, like, the vision that I had basically from ayahuasca, and before that, just from meditation and just through contemplation, I think, is that, there's this, and it's what all the mystics say, right? Like, from all kinds of different traditions, that there was this basic unity at the beginning of time, and the paradox that's imbued in all of creation started out. Is the top of my forehead cut off, or is no? It's just it started out as because of the fact that the only actual unity that is possible is nothingness. Because as soon as you have an object and space, you have two things. And so, as soon as there is a substantive thing, you have duality. So, nothingness was God. That's the origin of all of creation, was this nothingness. And it's not a nothingness that we can really comprehend. And it's not, it's really interesting actually to look into like the mathematics of zero and contemplate this nothingness, because zero and nothing are actually far more complicated concepts than you would think. And I think that this mathematical abstract contemplation of zero and nothingness can actually increase your metaphysical capacity to understand deity, basically, which is nothingness. And so once this nothingness had a thought, this is where this I am or logos idea comes from, that this thought was the vibration that imbued movement and also disrupted the unity and created duality. And that's why it's demonized in Genesis, right? That knowledge caused the fall. It's what created matter, this awareness. Consciousness itself is what is being demonized in Genesis. And so yeah, I mean, I can talk about that too. So, but let me finish this. So, the one, the none, right, the zero, it didn't go from 0 to 1. This is the secret meaning behind Aleister Crowley's 0 equals 2 equation. He said 0 equals 2 explains the universe, right? So, 0 split, and so there was 2. So there was never 1. There was only 0 and then 2, like a cell dividing. And the thing is, everything in the universe actually mirrors this original process. It's all based on it. And this is, again, what all the mystics have been telling us forever, that when the one divided into 2, just the same way that a cell does, there was a reflection. And so there was a multitude that was created by mirroring or reflecting this process. And so where twin flames come from, and actually, don't hold me to this definition, because I don't actually know what other people mean when they say twin flame. I had this vision of this thing happening, and I just assumed that that's what it was. But so the one divided into 2, and you have masculine here, and you have light, and you have information, and you have all of this stuff, and then over here you have darkness and mystery and feminine and all of this stuff. And then where they interact in the middle is kind of like where creation is. It's also described by Freemasons, as you're asking, as the 2 pillars of Jachin and Boaz, and one is the temple of light, or not the temple, the pillar, and the other is the pillar of darkness, and then they harmonize in the middle, and that's where we exist, where these two extremes collide, and that gives rise to creation by the interaction of these opposing forces, complementary but opposite, right? And it's also the reason that we have symmetry, because we are exactly in the center of the two antinomies, and so they're pushing equally in both opposite directions, right? So we have symmetry. So that's the reason that I think that we wouldn't reincarnate as different sexes, because when the big one, right, let's call it God for our purposes right now, divided into two, you have male here and female there. And so when we all imitated that process, all of our individual soul units, or monads they're called in some schools of the occult, and also I think the Greeks used it slightly differently than the Theosophists would later. But we're using it to designate this idea of like one unit of God, one ball of consciousness, right, before creation. Split into two, just like the original one did, and so you had male here and female here. And these are the two souls that are twin flames. They are the male and female constituent parts of one whole piece. And so that would be an eternal condition. But here's the thing: if they exist in an energetic basis, then I guess it is said that there is an inexhaustible supply of whatever energy the magician needs, because any energy can be transformed into any other type if you apply the right force in the right manner through the proper object, right? So it's the same as like any chemical interaction. If you wish to make an ounce of gold, then you need the proper chemical and the proper ratios and the proper materials to extract it and all of that. So yeah, I mean, I don't really know that we can't. Okay, so the story about my mom, and my mom committed suicide, and then we went out into the jungle to drink ayahuasca, and I was thinking that it was going to be a really, really difficult time because I had just went through this terrible thing, and at one point my mom showed up. All of the spirit beings turned into demons, and she was very, very unhappy, and skeletal blue flames coming out of her eyes, and blood turns cold. Later I was trying to get my comfort from my partner, and she would not respond. Later I asked her why, and she said because there were skeletons all around us, which blew my mind too. Like, she was there with me through the whole thing, seeing it all happen, and but without speaking, so neither one of us knew that we were sharing this experience. And then we went out to the jungle, and I got a hold of myself, and then as I was walking back to the jungle, Pachamama said, your mom didn't go into the stars, she went to Enrica's womb. 10 days later we found out Enrica was pregnant, and so, but we had a boy. And so another interesting part of it is that, ayahuasca also explained to me why that happens. And you can, because every part of the universe is a reflection of every other constituent part, right? You could think of an atom, an atom, molecule, and then protons, neutrons, electrons all spinning around it, and it's the same ones, right? And so souls are the same way. So you have, when people talk about a soul family or whatever, it's basically the same same blueprint as a molecule, the same structure. And so these things are spinning around, and so that proton is always either your mother or your sister or whatever, and then there's another one that's always your brother or your dad, or so you're always kind of in this like ball of soul consciousness with the same people, so to speak. Although you guys, it's really, really not possible. This is something that people have a really hard time with, to really know this kind of stuff. informed speculation is all it's ever going to be, and we can never trust the mind enough to be absolutely sure of anything. So, but that's why it's so important to learn all of these different systems, to try to learn music, because if you think about the fact that the universe is basically organized vibration and relation between vibrations, then you can understand how music is can inform you about the sort of the underlying themes in the universe, and you can actually see some of the structure of metaphysical models in the scales and modes in music theory. Once you really learn them, there are some astounding correlations between, for example, the association of numbers with like the trinity and a chord, for example, and some of the degrees of the scales actually reflect the meanings that are associated with the numbers of their position. It's really all quite remarkable and probably ultimately meaningful. So, when you're going down this kind of rabbit hole and contemplating things of this nature, if you're able to draw on all of these different systems, physics, music theory, observations of culture, just the more you know, the more, and also on top of that, you start to see that it really is all one thing doing one thing, and that observation of one system can inform you of everything that there is to know about every other system. What I was saying also, I got way off track, but Huxley, when I was putting this video together, because I haven't read Huxley since I was 15 years old, right? Maybe 15, yeah, probably 15. I had not read Crowley yet at that point, and when I was watching Huxley, who I'm fairly confident had no, you almost got it, had no interaction with Aleister Crowley's material. They were basically saying the same things, that normal people are insane, that psychedelics are really good for you, that there is some sort of divinity imbued with the entire universe, but it's not God the way that religious people think of it. That if we would all act in accordance, this is the one that really got me. Huxley saying, if every person knew that we were basically a splinter of the divine, and that our job was to connect with our, what he called the divine ground, and Aleister Crowley called the holy guardian angel, and some people call it the higher self, Plato called it the higher genius. What we have here is consistency with all of these great minds that have experienced gnosis. They all talk about the spiritual reality in the same way that people that have all been to the Sahara do, with consistent descriptions, right? Go to Sahara, there's fucking sand everywhere, there's sidewinder snakes, not much else, right? And if you've been to Virginia, everyone describes it the same way, because it's a real place that people can go to. And so I think that this consistency between, Plato and Aleister Crowley and Aldous Huxley, that's not derived from contact with each other necessarily, it kind of indicates that they're talking about something that is true, But yeah, he was saying if everyone, knew this, and then we knew that our job was to connect with this divine ground, this fundamental substance of divinity that is imbued in everything, and act in accordance with it, then we wouldn't have all this conflict, and we would only have so much suffering as the universe makes inevitable. And I've been looking for a way to say that for a long time, because of the fact that we are always going to be in a 50-50 split of antinomies, duality, as long as we're in this universe, like this dimension of reality. There's no escaping that. There's always going to be just as much darkness as there is light. There's always going to be just as much peace as there is violence. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't change anything. And people really want to argue with that because we want to believe that we can fix the world. But I don't think that that's, if you look throughout history, It's basically the same thing over and over again, patterns repeating, and we only have so much power, right? We are not able to overrule the fundamental laws of creation in order to change the way that things operate. We can only change how we relate to those fundamental laws, but we cannot change the laws, we cannot override them, we cannot suspend them. It would undo the entire universe. So the modes of the scale are Ionian, Aeolian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Dorian. Did I miss Phrygian? Because I'm looking at you writing them down. Ionian, Dorian, Lydian, Mixolydian. I'm on 5. Ionian, Dorian. This is embarrassing. I know this shit off the top of my head. What the hell's going on right now? Phrygian. Oh, that's the third. Phrygian's the third. So Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, fucking minor, which one is minor? Aeolian, right? Yeah. And then, fucking Locrian. I don't really know how to say it. So let me see if I can explain how those modes correspond to the numerology, because it really is trippy. Okay, so the 1 is home, right? So all the other notes in the scale, there's 7 notes in the Western system, which was given to us by Pythagoras, which is a whole nother crazy ass synchronistic bunch of lunacy, because he was, the old serpent. That's what Pythagoras means. And so, anyways, that's a different rabbit hole. So 1 is home, right? It's the key. It's the note that all of the other tones in the scale will come home to. And then 2 is the introduction of sadness. It's division. It's the first minor mode. So we had 1, which is the happiest, and everything pulls back to it. It resolves all of the tension in the 1. The 2 introduces division, and so now we have sadness. And then the 3 is sort of a middle point between the 2. So the mother and father are now harmonized in the Son, and we have the Trinity, because we have the 3 notes, and also a chord. Basic triad is the 1, 3, and the 5, which is like the Holy Trinity, right? So we'll skip 4 and go to 5. Mixolydian is 5 is the number of cycles, right? And so 5 is the strongest resolution back to the 1. But the most interesting one, I think, is 6, because the 6 is the dark reflection of the 1. And of course, we have the association with 666 and the devil, and 111 or 1 and God. And so the 1 and the 6 are like reflections of each other that are somehow opposite. And then the 7, which is in numerology associated with like disruption and like really tense, and also with cycles that repeat. And so that brings us back to the 1. But if you continue to 8, right, which is the octave, so now the 1 is the same note, but it's higher pitched, right? And the number of the Messiah is 8. And so the octave is 8, and it's the 1 again, but higher. So it's really crazy that it maps out this system that, this religious ontology or numerological, I don't even know what to call it, it is reflected in all that. And I think that the answer as to why that is that it all is coming from a place, a subconscious place, and it's based on the same thing. We can't help it. Everything in the universe is fundamentally having the same structure and the same forces and the same blueprints that inform them. And so we find these marvelous coincidences, I guess, in all of these different systems. And I think the closer to the fundamental nature of the actual wiring under the board, or the divine superstructure behind the universe, that we get, the more directly the systems reflect that. So in the case of music, you have a map that what we were just describing as a map of one of the constituent parts of the universe, that is the body basically of the deity. And it's like the male is the like the what gives it direction, I guess. Yeah, it is pretty crazy. It's pretty damn crazy. Um, so you're asking me what this 32nd degree Mason said to me. I don't know if you're still there. It's me, but if you are, I can answer you to an extent because it's not like we just had one conversation or something. I was a member of the lodge in good standing until fairly recently, a couple of years ago, and only because I just left and stopped paying the dues. I didn't like fall out of favor with them or anything. Although I didn't particularly like that lodge, I was gonna move to the Bay Area because they were a bit redneck, those guys, and it was just weird and awkward because I was like an outlaw. I never thought they'd have anything to do with me, honestly, but the 32nd degree Mason that invited me in, he invited me to lunch first so he could talk to me, and so basically all the same conversation that I'm having with you guys, I was having with him. Like stuff very much along these lines. And so he was an ex-cop, and at lunch one day he said, well, like, what kind of criminal record do you have? And I was like, oh man, assaults and drug possession and stuff. And he's like, well, shouldn't be a problem. And I was like, what? Because I thought for sure that was a problem. And he said, I have a criminal record too. And that like just doubly blew my mind because I'm like, wait a minute. You're a cop, an ex-cop, and a 32nd degree Mason, and you have a criminal record? How is that even like... I mean, I was in Northern California where, like nothing should surprise you. But so I continued going to lodge dinners for a while to kind of like try to get to know the local Masons, and also because I had to have two of them sign, and I had to, meet the other signer, and he would have done whatever the Master Mason told him to do, or it's the Master of the Temple. So basically, long story short, I was talking to him one day, and we were going into this kind of stuff again, and he just stopped me and he said, "You know more about all of this than any of these other men in this temple do," and so that was kind of like one of the first major confirmations I had that what I had uncovered, this perennial philosophy, as Aldous Huxley calls it, Terence McKenna I think had language for it too, and the reason it's mirrored so closely in all of the works of people like that, Timothy Leary, McKenna, Plato, whatever, is because of that. It's this thing that's what everyone sees when they genuinely connect with the gnosis. And the differences that you find in different systems are either because of delusion and incorrectness on the part of whoever has received the information, or it's just differences in aesthetic and presentation. But fundamentally, it's the same. And I'm not talking about, be good to each other and these kind of like basic moral teachings that, people like Jesus were expounding. I'm talking about the deep metaphysics of it, well, that's pretty funny. Well, there's like crypto people out there using gematria now. I mean, that would be not a bad idea, honestly. I mean, I know some of you guys have probably already heard my craziest gematria stories, but what got me originally, there were three things that really made me realize that there was something to it, and really, it's not that weird. Number lies behind everything, so of course, there's going to be numerical relationships that can be uncovered behind any system. Um, yeah. So, but what really got me with it is the first thing that I discovered from Robert Anton Wilson, who is absolute genius. If you guys haven't read the Illuminostic trilogy or Prometheus Rising, keep your eyes out. I think I'm going to do Robert Anton Wilson in my like Great Minds series next. So yeah, he's going up next because there's just so much Terence McKenna material out there already. And people are forgetting about Robert Anton Wilson, I think, which is really sad because he's at least probably more important than Terence McKenna. One of the reasons that I kind of have a preference for, I know Rudolf Steiner. He was actually basically, he was kind of, he borrowed heavily from Crowley as well, but he downplayed the association and kind of made it like almost like child friendlier or something, he kind of like took the horns off of it. Which was wise because it's really unfortunate actually that Crowley went so far in making these kind of like demonic associations with the Gnosis because he just hated Christianity so much and he liked the aesthetic of it, I think. But it's kind of unfortunate because it really gave people a lot of ammunition. So Steiner was trying to clean it up a little bit. A lot of it, I guess. But anyway, so the first thing was from Robert Anton Wilson, who was, in one of his books, he talks about how the Hebrew words for unity plus love plus truth, when reduced, equal 26, which is the number of the Tetragrammaton. And 13, oh man, I can't remember it all, but then 13 has some significance, and when it's multiplied by 2, it's duality, and it's multiplied by 2, and it adds up to 26. There's this whole big thing, but the main part was that these unity, truth, and love added together added up to 111, which is God. And so that was pretty amazing, although it's not as convincing as what happened to me later on. I started to wonder if I might not be the reincarnation of Aleister Crowley because of all these weird experiences. And actually my roommates and the people around me started thinking it before I would even consider it. And so one day my roommate went into his room and he punched my full name in and he got "He Whom is Aleister Crowley" and he came out of his room all white and dragged me in. And I can't remember if it was like all 4. I actually have 4 names, like the Tetragrammaton. I think that's how he did it. And then... probably even weirder because this is actually true for sure. Because, who knows, I actually have had since then that suggests to me that reincarnation isn't exactly correct anyways, that we do have pieces of people from the past in us, but no one is really totally anyone else. So I'm still on the fence as to how things work. Absolutely no doubt that I have at least a piece of that guy in me, though, because I've had all of his ideas in my head since I was like 6 years old, which is pretty weird. But the craziest gematria thing was actually about DMT. And so I had chronic fatigue syndrome, and I smoked DMT, and the symptoms went away. So I went to the gematria calculator and punched in indimethyltryptamine, and the only thing in the database at the time was cure for chronic fatigue syndrome. And so... I actually have written a blog now about studies that have confirmed in the last couple of years that chronic fatigue syndrome can be treated by DMT. So even beyond the experiences that I had later, it was confirmed in the laboratory that it's actually true. So, that is just fucking crazy that this obscure at the time psychedelic has the same numerical value as that which it can be used to treat. And so these underlying mathematical relationships do see, like I said, I'm not that surprised that gematria is a real thing. What is the purpose of the Giza pyramids? I have no idea, except that, honestly, I think it may surprise everyone in the end to find out that it has more to do with resonance than anything else, because there are like these chambers, like the King's Chamber, and there are tunnels connecting it that produce all these crazy series of overtones when sounds are made. The Grateful Dead actually. Well, yeah, I mean, that would be true. God's alive on earth in everything. I don't think there's anybody walking around that is like particularly God, as some religions like to think, no more than anyone else. Uh, Although an awareness and a connection to it is a different thing. Certainly, there are people that are aware of their connection to the divine ground or the universal mind or however you want to say it than a lot of other people, and able to access and use it. Let's see, was there another, what is the purpose of Giza pyramids? Yeah, but what I was going to say about all that, it has something to do with sound, and that's further cemented in my mind by the fact that in 1978, I think, the Grateful Dead decided they wanted to play at the base of the pyramids, which hadn't been done yet. And so, well, they were definitely used for initiating students of mysticism. That's not a question. Pythagoras is known to have traveled to Egypt to study in one of the mystery schools of Egypt, and that is where the connection between Freemasonry and the other mystery schools in Egypt actually comes from, because it was Pythagoras who went to Egypt and received probably knowledge of alchemy and the other teachings of the mysteries that he then took back to Greece, and those splintered off and became the Hellenistic mysteries of the Eleusinian mysteries and the other mysteries in Greece. But okay, so the Grateful Dead wanted to go and play the pyramids, and so they got a hold of the ambassador, and he said yes, which surprised the hell out of them. So they flew all these people to Egypt. There's video of this. You can actually watch it, and there are some crazy moments. Like the Bedouin, the desert people, come up out of the desert uninvited and just walked up onto the stage. No one stopped them. And they had all these instruments, crazy, like, probably been playing them for thousands of years in the desert. And they just walked onto the stage playing them. And so Garcia starts, like, noodling around until he gets in the zone with them. And the Dead just jams this crazy shit with these Bedouins that they're all like covered in black with just their eyes out. It's a fucking crazy thing to see. And so, they said that the Egyptian government let them just go in there when there was no one in there, and just let them have free reign of the pyramids, which it's just crazy. Like, why the hell would they do that? But they did, and maybe because they were celebrities, I guess. And there's a lot of the books, the biographies of the members, they talk about like going into these chambers and like making all these sounds, and they got recordings of a lot of it. I don't know why they've never released them, but it is a true fact also that they haven't released them. Speaking of Pythagoras and the Grateful Dead, one of the most amazing things that you can possibly witness, and it's worth it to go see Dead and Company, even if you don't like the Grateful Dead, just to hear the beam. It is 12 feet of steel with piano wire tuned in fifths, which is like power chords, the monk chant kind of sound, and it's played with a big steel bar, and he either hits it with the steel bar or drags it across the strings, and it has the widest frequency range of any instrument ever created. And they have like this like $110 million sound system, and it's like there's no words. Yeah, the Doggone Tribe. Yeah, we could talk about that. Yeah, that's actually really interesting, and it actually kind of ties into all this. But yeah, I know about the Rod. I've never really looked at. I've been meaning to do that. I mean, I generally just blow off everything that has any kind of pop culture relationship, but I will check out the Raw papers because I have a profound connection with this Raw, and one of the only experiences that I've ever had where I felt like I was directly speaking to like this super powerful non-human entity. It was a Raw experience with the sun. Yeah, I will. So, anyways, let me finish the Grateful Dead thing because it's actually crazier. It gets crazier. Um, so, years later, there was an eclipse on the third night. They had 3 shows, and there was an eclipse on the third night. And unfortunately, the main drummer had a broken arm. She's playing with one arm. The shows weren't as great as they were hoping. But there was still some magic. Anyways, later they found out that there were these hieroglyphs that said that at the beginning of the new aeon, this massive shift for humanity, this group of musicians called the Jed, D-J-E-D, and remember people called the Dead, right? So it's like almost the same name, would come and play on this eclipse, and that would be one of the major signals that this period of transition was happening. And there's more to it. I can't remember. People have written like these really long, crazy papers on it, but that's fucking nuts. Yeah, all that craziness. So I do think that the resonance chambers in the pyramid probably have, a relationship with whatever is significant about them. But I think that's as much as we really can know without going back and actually talking to the people that built them, or if they become activated at some point and something goes down. So let's see, there was something else that I felt like I could actually talk about. Someone mentioned. Man, I did like it a lot better with this light on. I look a lot more ragged. What was it though? The Dogon tribe. So that is probably the well, they may not have gotten that on. No, it is. You can. There's DVDs that were officially released, and it has the Bedouins walking up onto the stage in the beginning of the show for sure. And it's released on CD as well. Yeah, I mean that's that. There you go. That's the numerical structure and also the symmetry that you will find in throughout the universe. But what we were talking about, it's crazy if you don't drink coffee for a while how badly it'll scramble you. It's not really. I can't believe I used to just consume it all the time. I feel kind of queasy and rambly. The Dogon tribe. Okay, so. There are 2 things that are really interesting about them, and it's probably one of the best bits of evidence. The guys with the fish hats, the Pope. It's exactly like the Pope's hat from Sirius. Yep. And so there are 2 things that are very well. The one thing is really good evidence for extraterrestrial contact. But cannabis is actually the most biologically advanced plant on Earth. It's the most sophisticated biologically. Yeah, that's it. And it's not like any other plant here. I mean, it's super weird. And so the Dogon claimed to have actually received cannabis from these aliens and claimed that it was from another planet. And one of the things that's interesting about this is in terms of like anthropology and tribal people, contact with aliens is not really very common, especially in like South America. And that's one of the arguments actually that a lot of skeptics make is that like, why are no Native American people ever see UFOs and stuff, or indigenous people ever see UFOs? But I think it can be argued that there are a lot of records of people in antiquity observing things that could very easily turn out to be UFOs. But in the case of the Dogon tribe, their claim to having received marijuana from extraterrestrials from Sirius has some pretty seriously weird support in the form of star charts from 7 star systems away that are totally accurate that we just discovered with the Hubble telescope that they've had forever. There's really no explanation for that other than that they're telling the truth. I mean, that's it, They either received these star charts telepathically via a transmission from these Syrian beings, which, I actually have experienced that myself, And I also have good reason to believe that it was real. And it's another one of those times where I actually documented it so that there's proof of the time frame, which is important to the story, and a lot of witnesses. So, one of, okay, so how do I even talk about this? Because I don't want to go into the whole story. I've made videos about it, but basically, for a long time, I was having a vision of this like crazy, like demon sort of looking thing. It didn't look evil, but it had horns and a human face, kind of, and it was purple, and so. I didn't know what it was though, and it would just be like intermittently it would like pop into my mind's eye, and I'm like, what the hell is that? It would go away, you know. But it was really like it really stuck with me, and so I drank ayahuasca one time and I saw it standing in front of me, and Pachamama said, "Do you want to know what this is?" And of course I said yes, and she said, "Well, it's you know how an object can be in two places, but it's the same object according to physics." And I said, "Yeah," and she said, "Well, souls do that." And this is you, but you're on a gas giant that didn't become a red dwarf star because of the influence of Sirius A and Sirius B. It didn't develop into a red dwarf. Otherwise, it would be a trinary, I guess, not binary, but tertiary star system. And so she said, you know, you in this form actually transmit these teachings to like members of the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, humans. I was really surprised to see you here because you know you used to actually teach me, and I was like, okay, you know that's crazy. And I mean, but when you're out that far in psychedelics, I take things relatively with a grain of salt. The thing about that is that nothing they've told me so far turned out not to be true. And then about 10 days after that ceremony, it occurred to me that I should look and see if there is astronomical data that supported what Pachamama had told me. And it turned out that 5 days after the ceremony, a paper was published that said that there was a third body that had been long suspected because of the wobble that they detected on Sirius B, I think, that they thought there was a third thing there, and they had confirmed it, and it was a gas giant that had not become a red dwarf because of the influence of the other two stars. And that is exactly what this Pachamama had told me regarding those planets and stars. So, you know, and the thing is, I'm not an astronomer, and I would not know that. I mean, to suggest that I just kind of randomly came up with that because I was high and it just happened to be a coincidence that it turned out to be true does not seem plausible to me. So, and then I discovered a few days after that in the writings of Anne Bailey that she said there are these beings near Sirius B that transmit these teachings, exactly what ayahuasca had told me, these beings. And she said they're not substantial, they're kind of like in an in-between state between matter and spirit, so they kind of exist in an energetic sort of form. It's a gas giant, there's nothing to stand on, there's no oxygen. Actually, that night in the tent, I told everyone at the ayahuasca ceremony what had happened, and so I actually started telling people what it was like to live there, which you know, it was really insane. So anyways, the reason that there's a blue star in Masonic lodges is because of this Sirius connection and the teachings that are being transmitted regarding the secret doctrine. That is why there is a blue star that signifies Sirius in Masonic lodges, according to Anne Bailey and also according to my own experience. So, you know, it really does appear to me that we receive information from all over the universe. You know, again, speaking of Huxley, one of the quotes that I included in my No, I haven't seen. I haven't seen that face with the horns, and that's not where the story started. Well, it is where the story started. So I was coming back from the first time I saw it. I was coming back from the meeting with the Star Tribe Native Americans in New Mexico, where they told us that some of us were in telepathic communication with the Star Tribes, and that a lot of ancient peoples had always been in communication with them. I was driving home from there, and that's the first time I saw it, and a couple other times over the next few weeks. But then I kind of forgot about it for a number of years, and then right before I came to South America, I was playing guitar a lot, and my girlfriend at the time said sometimes when you're practicing, I can like see this vague silhouette of this like purple demon-looking creature hovering behind you, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. So Satan's my spirit animal or something, like that's no surprise. And so I was playing with another friend of mine who actually has that guitar now in the States. And one day he said, because we would take acid and play together, he said, man, I gotta tell you something, like 3 times now I've seen this like giant purple like thing that's got horns, and it's like hovering behind you when you play. And he'd never even met my girlfriend at the time. And then I was at a bar about a week after that, and I walked by this Maori kid, and he said, hey man, something I gotta tell you. There's like this purple. I was like, yeah, I know, purple thing with horns. And he's like, whoa, you know about that? So, you know, it had been like, people had been like mentioning it consistently for weeks before I came to South America. And then Pachamama was like, hey, look at this, you know, and explained it to me. So yeah, that's that story. And it's not, it's not just me. There are a lot of Robert Anton Wilson, for example. He wrote a book called Cosmic Trigger: The Final Secret of the Illuminati, and I'm pretty sure that it actually does have the final secret of the Illuminati in it, because his daughter was beaten to death on her way home from school shortly after he published the book, and then he changed his story to say that he had just lost his mind and nothing in it was true. And if you read that book, it is obviously not the disordered ravings of a disordered mind. It does not strike anyone as that at all. And he was claiming that he had established telepathic communication with an alien from Sirius, an alien consciousness, and told him all the same shit that it told me and everybody else throughout history. You know what I mean? So it appears to be real. You know, I mean, I just can't get away from it. I wasn't in a hurry to accept that kind of thing, you know. I don't know what else to say about it. You guys have any other questions or topics that you want to... gosh, I sure do know a lot of weird stuff. Here's a random tidbit I'll give you guys. And this is absolutely true. This guy is absolute scum. I knew him in Northern California because I worked with people that knew him. I don't think Jesus was either of those things. Jesus was a psyop by the Roman consulate, because the Palestinians and some of the who would become the early Christians but were like Orphic Gnostics, they were more like warriors, you know. This whole idea of being a pacifist was not really a thing back then. So they were looking for a way to create a more manageable pacifist herd, and so they composed the myth of Jesus, and one of the... This is like proof, you guys, that he was never a real person, okay? There are much less well-known historical figures that there are some record of, right? But there's not one eyewitness account, there's not any diary entries. The Roman consulate kept very, very tedious anal court records, arrest records. There were public records of like people speaking, right? If a crowd gathered, I mean, it's like now, like they had government agents basically watching everything, and if there anything happened, there was a record of it. Nothing about a Yeshua, Yoshua, Jesus of Nazareth. Nobody, nowhere, no record. So he just never existed. And every single event in his life can be traced back to an earlier myth. And so my screen is frozen. Are you guys still... Oh. Sorry, I don't know if it froze. I only have 20% battery left, so... where did you guys lose me? Or did it only freeze for me? Did it freeze for you guys too? Okay. So, every aspect of Jesus' personality can be traced to an earlier myth, so we know it's a composite myth. All of the holidays and stuff are just pagan holidays with a new name attached to them. And his ministry, like where he traveled to go and say stuff to people, is exactly the campaign trail of Titus, this military campaign. So, and then we have actually found documents in 2013 where the Roman consulate was sitting together and planning it and designing the myth. It's 100%, none of it's true. It's just totally fabricated. Totally fabricated, based on other myths, nothing real about it. And it's one of the worst things that's ever happened to humanity, in my opinion. I mean, there's been more suffering, death, destruction, disease passed around, more oppression. Science was set back by 200 years. They estimate, because of the influence of Christianity, at least 200 years. So it's just, I don't like it. Please do me a favor and hit the like button, share, subscribe. My family was hacked and robbed for $10,000, which was everything we had. Actually twice this week, so we definitely need your support. You can support us on Patreon and get access to premium content. You can make a one-time contribution through our new and secure crypto address, which I think I put in the chat. Yep, up at the top of the chat, there's a Cash App address, and there is Zelle and PayPal. So please, if you can, help us out. We really need to get back on track, man. That was the most devastating thing that's ever happened to me. It went from being one of the best weeks of my life to the worst week of my life in a matter of 48 hours. And a lot of you guys really contributed a lot to help us get there. And so it was really devastating to think that all of you guys reached so deep, to help us to try to make some positive changes in the world. And then it was just taken from us. It was like it was taken from all of us. And so that's pretty awful. So yeah, if you can, help us get through it. So where are we at? Different races being survivors or rescued and relocated from lost civilizations. I don't know. I wasn't there, but one of the best pieces of evidence about that, I think, comes from Plato. And the reason it's a good bit of evidence is because it comes from his diary. And nothing in the diary is fictional. Yeah, I did, and thank you. But okay, so Plato wrote of Atlantis, and he wrote of it in a diary where every other bit of information in there is factual. Well, no, it wasn't Golden Light Eagle that said we kicked it 40,000 years ago. It was this dude in the parking lot before I met Golden Light Eagle. But yeah, that guy did say that. But yeah, I mean, I think the fact that Plato wrote about it in a context that where everything else was factual is pretty good evidence that it was at least real. Yeah, okay, I'll check that out. I've actually let me copy that right now. Because I've been thinking it would really help me to expand my audience if I started talking to other people. Yeah, I mean, when I was watching the Huxley, the premiere, I was really sad because there was like 3 people, and one of them was probably me, and I was thinking, this content definitely is worthy of like a large audience. What the fuck is going on? And part of it is that I think that I've been broke for so long. I haven't had the money to promote really, and then having that money stolen from us this week, man. I was gonna get a microphone so that I could do like good sounding music live streams, which I think would help a lot too. And man, but it's okay. We'll build it back up. Take over. So how long have I been talking? Almost an hour? I don't know. What else you guys got, man? You guys have actually been coming up with some interesting questions, and it's actually surprised me. I've had something to say about all of it. And do me a favor, and really, if you don't mind, push that Huxley video, because I think it's really good. It's one of the most concise elucidations of the the toxicity of the modern culture, and also spirituality and enlightenment and mysticism and psychedelics that I think you'll find anywhere. I was really surprised when I was done and I watched it again, how well it had come out, and also the way that the images and the quotes and the music synchronized on their own so much was really just marvelous. Yeah, well, the same thing happened to me speaking through music. I can't help but just tell the truth. And when I started to notice that, the narrative that liberals were getting fed was seriously not objective and didn't reflect the truth of any of the situations, I was saying it on live streams right away. And I got deserted by a ton of people. I lost a huge amount of money even, because I had a lot more patrons back then, and they had deleted their support. So it's true. He who speaks the truth has few friends. This is just an unfortunate condition of our culture. It's not, you don't need to stay grounded when you astral project. What you need to do is stay grounded when you come back. Because, my experience has been that every time I interact with some kind of entity or deity or whatever it is, whatever those things are, on the astral plane through psychedelics or whatever kind of experience I'm having, they always tell the truth. But that doesn't mean that they always tell the truth. And so also you have to be careful, because a lot of times you can interpret things in ways that don't reflect what was being communicated. This is, what I'm always calling wish demons. And so when you return to this plane of existence, if you have misinterpreted something of significance and you act on it, a lot of times this can cause disruption. And I think one of the great dangers of an accelerated spiritual development is that when you start to notice that these things are real, and the more you have like intuitions and precognitions and experience telepathy that you can confirm are absolutely true, the easier it is to believe things that are actually just thoughts that don't have any substantive truth to them. And another consequence of this is that as people develop, their ego often inflates. And that's of course not what we want, but the ego is basically the devil, and it's slippery and sneaky. And so it's very, very common that people don't recognize that the devil may come as an angel of light, and you end up deceiving yourself, and it can get you into a lot of trouble. So that's, the other thing that is recommended is that you learn to test intelligences that you encounter on the astral plane, because it is said that sometimes they will misrepresent themselves, and the magicians in mystery schools were actually taught how to ascertain whether one entity or another was the one that it represented itself to be. And there's information on how to do this in Aleister Crowley's Magic in Theory and Practice, how to test the intelligences to see what you're actually dealing with. So yeah, that's it. You need to stay grounded in your normal life. Go as far out there as you want. Don't worry about that. But when you bring the stuff back with you, be careful what you do with it. That's really the thing. So, anybody got anything else? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, in that case, I've been talking forever. Thank you guys all so much for your support. Please don't forget to hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon, Zelle, PayPal, crypto, whatever. Help us get ourselves out of this terrible fucking hole from getting hacked. Share my videos, that's really helpful too. Help me grow the audience. I feel like, we're capable of having some impact in this community, and the community has gotten stronger and stronger over the years. Relationships that are meaningful have developed with people in the community that I'm very grateful for. And of course, I think it's inevitable that I will have success in crypto and not get hacked next time, and then I will be able to empower the people that have had my back. And I think I'm too smart and too determined and have too many forces on my side to fail. And so I think that the momentum that we're creating is definitely going to accelerate. It's just really unfortunate that we got the rug pulled out of us right now, because it was really good time for me to really put the gas pedal down. And so it's going to happen a little slower. Definitely impacted my health as well to have this level of stress just suddenly manifest. It was really fucking bad. So thank you guys so much for spending this time with me, and we'll see you again soon.